Welcome to Multifamily Grit, where we bring in the experts to share the pros and cons and celebrations and struggles of the most important industry in the U.S., multifamily property management. Today, we are chatting with Jenny McClain, Chief Marketing Officer of Giarratana, about building a brand through setting yourself apart and breaking barriers. Jenny's passion for the brand taught me so much in my first years in the industry, and I'm extremely excited for her to share her expertise with us today. And before we get started, we are sponsored today by Fortress OS, the only core property management operating system built with an emphasis for today's affordable operators. Ready for your applicants, leasing agents, and compliance team to love the software they work in and the job they do every day? If you like what you hear today, please like and subscribe. Jenny, it's so incredible to be reconnecting here.
Oh my God,
today.
This is the best. I'm so excited and honored to be here.
I am so grateful that you decided to be here with us today. And before we dig in, I'd love for you to share your incredible story about how you got into the industry with everyone.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so when I was a little girl, I dreamed, no one does that. No one actually dreams, I think, of being in property management. Maybe now because we're so much more professional.
Yes.
I fell into this by accident, and I had a family member had connections with a group of people that worked for JCH Properties here in Nashville.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was 19, going to Belmont, had no business being in the business at all, had no idea what the hell I was doing, but they knew I could get the rent.
Yeah.
And they knew I had no shame in my asking game. So they hired me to manage 2 affordable housing properties in Wilson County. And I absolutely loved it and sort of just moved up from there. But starting in affordable, I think, was probably the best thing that could have ever happened, because when you do affordable housing, you can do almost anything else.
It's intense to start there.
Yeah, it's the most intense. Because I had no frame of reference, I didn't know how intense it was. But it was also, to me, I look back now and everything I've done, the only thing I have not done is student housing. Those folks are survivors.
Yeah.
I mean, true.
The chaos between
bow
them.
down.
Yeah.
The parent, all the, oh my God. And affordable managers and operators to me are right there too. I just, having lived that and been through it, it was equal parts insanity, but also most rewarding. I mean, I look back and think now how those residents were some of my, to this day, very favorite, because I'd be working till 6 or 7 or whatever, and they'd be bringing food over. They're working 2 and 3 jobs, making ends meet. It just, on a daily, reminded me why you do what you do.
Yeah.
Because they were just fantastic. So
yeah.
But I got into it that way, and then went to work in Antioch in Nashville, which is a time when Antioch was such a happening spot where people would come, and that's where they kind of moved first, and then they would branch out.
Yep.
And I worked for Letic there, and then it was Lane, and then it was Mid-America, and not Mid-America Memphis, Mid-America Ohio, and went to work at Bentry, which is now, I think, Abington Heights.
Yep.
And it was a turning point, and that's where my husband and I got together. He was married my maintenance man. Shout out to Jay.
I was going to ask you about the story, so I'm glad you shared.
No, shout out to Jay. But that was a big learning curve. That was kind of that moment working at that property of, am I going to do this, or am I going to get the GTFO?
Yeah.
And I just loved it. And found my way to the vendor side after a while. And then one day, Dan Ford said to me, let's have breakfast. Well, actually, that's not true. Brad Cather was the first one who came to me and said, I'm coming for you. And I thought, oh, shit, what'd I do? And then the very next day, I got a call from Dan Ford that said, I want to have breakfast, and I've got some marketing questions. I want to talk to you about some marketing things. I was like, great. Anything I can do to help Dan Ford. And so sat down, and then he was like, just kidding. We're starting, we need some marketing at this new company I'm at. And I'm like, what? And then I heard about Elmington, and it was kind of like the thing that they say, you get, find a seat on the rocket ship.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. And that's when Elmington happened. And then the trajectory after that was just crazy. So that was it. It was a family member that referred me to a management group that I was just like, this will hold me over while I get through college. And then 25 years later, here we are.
Yeah, man, 2 industry legends here in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, Brad and Dan, and that connection.
Well, I mean, Brad Cather.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot just say enough good things about Brad, and Dan Ford too, for that matter. Dan Ford, those two, and Kerri Davis.
Yeah.
I was walking among giants and didn't really even understand how much. And my early days getting into the apartment association and on the board of directors and understanding kind of the innards of the Nashville multifamily business was just very, very helpful too. So all of
Yeah.
those things kind of came together at a time that really Nashville was up and coming anyway. The IT City was happening. We were right at the beginning of that as a company with Elmington, and we really made some amazing strides there and did
Yeah.
some amazing work and continue to this day. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing.
Absolutely. I will say, you said working with Brad and Dan, not even realizing like walking among giants in the industry. I think it's just a huge testament to who they are as humans.
Yeah.
They never made you feel that way. Like,
oh no, I had didn't really understand. They're quiet. They're quiet leaders that way.
patience
And just
humility and
just make you better.
yes.
And any chance you get to work with them, I would highly recommend it. But
Yeah.
it was I look back now and think about kind of our first early days at Elmington with who we had there, and just thought, that's just a magical time.
Yeah.
Where we just had the best of the best together, and the things that we were able to accomplish in a very short amount of time.
I mean, when you're so like a startup, like just lean and scrappy
my
and just
God.
can make stuff happen.
Well, the
and-
great thing was we didn't know what we didn't know,
Yeah.
and we didn't know
Yeah.
what we couldn't do.
Yeah.
And nobody had, there were no reins, like
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
There were personality things going on, but there were no, nobody was over there holding a wall up or a
Yeah.
ceiling up or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it was really fun to kind of, stretch your legs and figure out what direction to go in and what was working and what wasn't, and all of that. It was incredible.
Yeah. And then from 5,000 units to 30,000 units in about
Oh my
5
God.
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Oh well,
absolutely
in
incredible.
the 2 years I was there, we went from like 3,500 to 20,000.
Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
oh, we really can do this together. Like
Yeah.
the ways that it all came to life and really overnight.
Yeah.
I tell the story all the time about how Tony happened.
Yeah.
And it's just an incredible situation. It was March, I think, of, I don't know, when did I start for it? So it was like March of 15. We were in an executive team meeting together, and we were going around the room saying, who do we want to work with? And they got to me, and I said, well, Tony Giarratana is going to do some stuff. I mean, that guy's, we want to be in the A game. That guy's doing the best stuff.
Yeah.
Let's keep our eye on him. So fast forward to April Fool's Day a few weeks later, and I had, foiled Rosenblum's office.
So good.
Top to bottom.
So good.
And kind of messed with other offices too. And
His pens, his lamps.
paper clips, like foil in his office.
So
It was
good.
ridiculous. And I was so excited. So I thought I was so funny. And I'm not a morning person, but by God, I was there at 8 a.m. so I could be like waiting. And I thought I was hilarious. And then Dan walks in and says, we're, Tony Giarratana's coming up here. I guess his Ryan and our Ryan had spoken.
Yep.
And he said, Tony Giarratana's coming up. We're going to talk about management. And he goes, we're going to meet in Kerri's office. I said, no, we're not. We aren't. No, we're not. We're not doing that. And he goes, why? I'm like, because I foiled it. And it's April Fool's. And he just looked at me and he walked straight to the other corner and looked in the office and then just looked back at me. And I was like,
It's April Fool's Day.
either this is going to be really, really good or it's over right now. And Tony walked in and walked around the corner and saw it and busted out laughing, thank God. And then he looked down and he looked at me and he goes, I know you. And I was like, yeah. And 3 days later, we got the business.
Yeah.
And it was just, from then on, we went exponential.
Yeah.
And exponential after that.
Yeah. It's such a great story. And I feel like it was something that we're going to talk about today, but talk about an industry titan here in Nashville, but a man who's literally like changing the game of real estate in Nashville. And now you work with him.
Who started that way, actually.
Yeah.
Like, that guy was here having no friends, was just coming from being had been in commercial was his total background. And then when he got to Nashville, there was just no real path for him to do that. He was here for years before he was able to build the first thing. And the only reason he was able to build was the vision of Mayor Bredesen, who came in and said, I know that what the city needs is density. He was from New York, so he knew what we were missing.
Yeah.
It was the folks here that didn't necessarily want it or think that they needed it. And so thanks to Bredesen, who kind of gave Tony the path and told Tony, if you build residential, I'll give you TIF money. And Tony left them. Tony said, absolutely. Yeah, that's what we'll do. And we walked out or he walked out and he looked at his attorney and said, "What's TIF?" Like he had no idea what it was. Didn't know what it was. Just knew that that was the way he was going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And that's all she wrote. He built the Cumberland. And I remember when he built the Cumberland, he came to do an apartment association function and was giving kind of the synopsis of what was going on and what he was going to build. And there were still people there in the audience. And first of all, I was one of a few women in that group.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I was there as a proxy. Somebody couldn't go, and they still wanted me to go. And it was just incredible to me the people that were there that were listening to what could happen in our city that were just eye-rolling, snarky. This guy's not even from here. Like, no one wants to live downtown. And to be fair, there was tumbleweed. There was nothing. Downtown had been shuttered for 30 years.
Yeah.
They had a code on the books that said you could not build new residential because in the council's mind, I mean, plainly put, that's what they thought brought prostitutes downtown. So they outlawed new residential for 30. They almost tore the Ryman down.
Oh my gosh!
Because there was no one was coming downtown. True tumbleweed. My husband, born and raised here, said the only thing you did downtown was go to Acme Feed and Seed for feed and seed. That's all you did.
Can you
even
believe
not
that?
now?
Like, yeah,
of course
right?
not now. But Tony, I remember going up to. I was 19 when I met him, and I remember going up to him and saying then. Nobody thinks you're going to actually get to do this. Like, I mean, these people, he goes, I know.
You did that
at
the council meeting.
No, at the meeting, because I was just, and I had been, at that point, my stepdad was a hotel GM my entire life.
Yeah.
We'd moved every 2 years. We lived in all the major cities. I mean, Dallas, San Francisco. I'd been to these places. I knew exactly what he was talking about. I'm like, I mean, at 19, I'm like, this is, how do you, truly you folks don't think that they're going to sit here in Nashville and something we not move forward with progress in this downtown area.
Yeah.
That's just, that to me was cancerous thinking.
Yeah.
Like there's
Absolutely.
just no way you're going to have any kind of sustained income or sustained economy at all when you have this mindset. So it was really frightening to me to think. But I loved that when I went up to him and I said, nobody thinks you're going to do this. And I know what you're talking about. And we just had this really great conversation. And I remember asking him at the end, are you going to move downtown? He goes, no. So I just got tickled. I said, okay. And he goes, I think we need to know each other. I said, yeah, we probably do. And I remember when he was building the Cumberland, and I would go, at the time I was working at the newspaper, and then I worked for Apartment Guide. Shout out to Carol. And I remember seeing Tony in the leasing office down there. I'm like, I don't, very seldom do I see a developer actually on site, let alone
in the office.
Leasing the apartments.
He was leasing.
Yes, he was leasing. And I was just like, wow, okay. And so we just kind of kept up. So that beautiful time when with Elmington, where that was kind of a full circle situation that I thought was kind of the end of it.
Yeah.
I had no idea this is where it would end up, but I guess that was meant to be.
Yeah. So tell me about what you're doing with Tony now.
All things marketing for Tony, which is crazy in itself because he's a master marketer. But he's just redefining the skyline per usual. And we're right now working on the tallest building in the state, which will be 1010, 60 stories. So yeah, never a dull moment in Giarratana land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that it's so fitting that you and Tony work so well together, right?
Mm.
Because he's so passionate about the product and what it is that he's building and delivering. And you are so passionate about the brand. I think you even call yourself the beacon of the brand.
I am very serious about brand in any way, shape, or form. And I just, as much time, and I tell him this a lot, because it's funny, he's very involved in every aspect, as anybody, I think, in his spot should be. But it's when it comes to the brand, he kind of, I tell him it's important. The architecture of the brand is as important as the architecture of the building. Mm-hmm. Because what you're building on the inside out has to be communicated. It's only communicated by the product in one way, but it's three-dimensional. Mm-hmm. And the brand is a huge, huge part of that. And not only that, but you're giving the team, especially leasing and our manager on site, the tools that they need to communicate effectively what it is and where they are, what they are, to their target market. And I don't understand not spending the same amount of time that you do on the architecture of the building, on the architecture of the brand. Yeah. And I mean, because otherwise you leave it to chance. I mean, there's always a part of the brand that's going to be communicated by who you have on site. I mean, that to me is one of the biggest pieces is the people, which is missing from the 4 Ps and drives me crazy. But it's just such a critical piece of the entire package. So it's like you go to these great lengths and millions of dollars, and I see it across the board, which is one of the reasons I do appreciate how intricate Tony gets when it comes to those pieces and involved. But because even before Elmington, it was so painful, like as an advertising vendor, to go from lease-up, especially when Nashville, the boom really first started, and we, 11 North, Pine Street, E23, all of these properties that started, and it was the first time I finally saw some actual real thoughtful branding versus just stock photos that somebody pulled off the website and then tried to, or off of a stock photo site and tried to build a website. And nothing informs the insides the way that the brand does. That is critical to what everything else, what happens after that. Yeah. And down to forms, down to the feel, the vibe, everything of it. And so many people don't understand it. It's secondary. It's a place on the budget that they check the box and move on. And to me, that's such a disservice. It makes me real crazy.
Yeah. You and I have talked a lot about the 4 Ps in property management. In fact, we actually created training materials around it when we went back to the basics at Elmington Property Management. And so what are the 4 Ps and how do you feel about them?
The 4 Ps: product, price, promotion, place.
Yeah.
I fucking hate them. I really do. Sorry. I appreciate. Is that he turned around? Am I in trouble?
You're good. You're good. Promise.
Oh God, I thought. Here we go. They're gonna pull me out. Like the door open.
Don't worry about him.
The door's opened. Like, I'm gonna fall through the floor? I don't know.
Not yet.
I appreciate the fundamentals because those are, of course, incredibly important. But to the extent that people hang their hat on on the 4 Ps and think that they're doing their marketing job is exhausting to me.
Yeah.
And I think that you're missing passion and people on that. And there's so many more things. I'm more about the senses. If you can touch all the senses, then I feel like you're at least digging in a little bit more on how it's going to impact someone personally.
Yeah.
And when you can do that, and I take it personally. Everything for me is personal anyway, but I take it personal because you cannot find a more personal decision that they're going to make their entire year than
where they live,
leasing or renewing at your apartment community. And so to me, it is personal. And I always say, you've heard me say this, it's like if I'm going to spend time away from my husband and my kids all day, who I adore and love, it's personal to me, and I want to. It's important, and I throw all of my passion behind it. And if anybody around me is not doing the same, then GTFO.
Yeah,
I don't have time for it.
Yeah,
like nobody. It's not worth it to me to spend time with somebody that's not, in it to win it the same way that we are. Because otherwise, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When you and I were first talking about the 4 Ps. I disagreed with you slightly because I do think that there's a place for them.
Sure.
But you came back and you're like, okay, I hear you. Like, it's okay that you don't fucking hate them. But they're the basics.
They're the basics,
right?
That's right.
And you're never going to change them.
Anyone can do that.
Yep.
Anybody can do it. Anybody can check the 4 boxes and be like, we did our marketing, whoop, whoop, and call it a day. It's the stuff that you do after that. It's just like on a site. It's how many times you're going to follow up with that prospect.
Yeah.
If you do just then one or twice and think you're done, then you're doing just enough to get by and you're not even succeeding. How many times are you going to follow up to make sure that they found, even if it's not at your apartment, where did they pick to live?
Yeah.
And why did they pick there if it's not here?
Yeah.
It's just those things that make it matter so much, that sets you apart, that makes people understand that it's just different here. And that's what I love about what we do and how our team does it, is that they may not know exactly what it is or why, but they just feel the difference.
Yeah.
And I think when you can do that, and I just did several resident testimonials with folks, and that was kind of the overarching message, was that it was just different. Forget that I saw the building from the interstate or when I Googled, I got it right off the bat, or whatever. I saw it, but I got here. I felt there was just a total difference, and this is the level that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And I just think, again, that wraps up the brand nicely for what we do.
Yeah. Have you read the book Unreasonable Hospitality?
No.
Okay, highly recommend it. It was written by a restaurateur in New York, and it's actually his evolution of his experience in the restaurant industry. And he talks so much about how people feel, like whether it's your employees or the actual customer that comes in the door. But the way that you make people feel is really the representation of
Maya, right? Angelou. It's like they will never remember what you said. They'll remember how you make them feel. And I've lived by that. Like, just to me, I think that makes all the difference in the world. And I mean, and I think of 1,000 ways in which that can happen every day. And if we can even do a few of those, it's we're all the better. I mean, whatever that means. If we had a resident not long ago that just came in and just face red, crying, upset, and we had no idea why. We didn't know what was going on, but I said, send them the basket. And we had a little care package that you send there, and you put it down, and you just say, just because. And that's it. You don't have to say, we saw your face and you look like you had been crying all day.
Yeah.
You don't do those things. You just do those little things that are, meaningful, that make a statement about where your heart is. And I think when you can do that and it really resonate, especially at the right time, get that timing right, I think that speaks volumes more than any concession or any discount or anything like that, and puts a value on your place that no one else can touch.
Yeah.
And I think you're right about the employee side of that.
Yeah.
Could not agree more. I mean, and gets so overlooked so much because we're all running 1,000 miles an hour. But to me, that's a huge piece of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if your employees feel cared for and feel happy, it gives them so much more space to then pass that feeling on, right? Because they're not stressed about whether or not their manager is happy with them or mad at them, or whether or not it's okay for them to spend the money on the gift basket or whatever. They don't worry about those things. They're just when they feel good, it's so much easier to pass that feeling along to everyone else. Yep. So, huge believer in that. So, tell me, what are the things that you're doing, that Giarratana is doing to build a brand?
To me, it's our people. Yeah. And that is, when you hire the right people that get it, that takes 90% of the problem away from making sure that you're communicating that brand effectively. Yeah. And there is a major difference. And I tell people when we talk to them, when we sit down, we are not for everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I'm not for everybody, and I know that. That's okay too. But I'll tell you what we are passionate about what we're doing. We're going to have a really good time, and we're going to win. Yep. And it may not always look like we're winning, and it may hurt. We may fall right on our face plant every day, but we're still going forward. We're still going to get there together, and we're going to have a damn good time doing it. Yeah. And so to me, it's the people side of that. I've got somebody, one of our leasing team, who she's also in real estate, which is kind of one of those things for me that I'm like always a little hesitant about, because when they're in real estate, they're often doing their own business. But it's a nice overlap with what we do, because we do have condos and apartments. Mm-hmm. And she just gets it. Like, it's one of those people that, you all have them. I bet it's you and William even. It's like you just give them a look and you're like, y'all. And you don't even have to say, did you see? And it happened not long ago when we were in an elevator with Tony and I, in fact. And somebody had a mattress on an elevator we were waiting to get on. And that's why we have service elevators. Yeah. And all he did, we were in the middle of talking to somebody. He just looked back at me and I was like, copy. I was like, we're going to need to make sure that they get rerouted to the elevator, to the right elevator. And, those little things that, while to others may not seem like a big deal, that's part of your brand. Yeah. That we're not having that sort of thing happening on our passenger elevators. They need to be on the service elevator, and make sure that if they need help, we give it to them. And it's, what's going on. But just little things like that. And she's, Candida is her name. And she just gets it. And, my favorite thing that she says is, Chanel don't go on sale. And that is exactly how I feel about what we're doing. And it's been interesting in downtown with concessions and things like that, with what we've had to, the supply has been so great. But it's fun when you're kind of building defining a lifestyle downtown, which is what we did with 505.
Yeah, absolutely.
And seeing that evolution of that happen, and everybody's just like, aren't you so worried about supply and it's hard? I'm like, not really. I feel like we're still trajectory wise behind, and we're going to be barely there to be able to absorb what's coming anyway.
Yep.
Just wait till Oracle gets here.
Yes, couldn't agree more.
Anyway, I'm rambling now, but
no, I love what you said about the having the right people, and something that always resonated with me, especially as the Elmington Property Management was growing and we were constantly adding new team members, is the old adage that the people at the top have all the power and none of the knowledge, or all the authority and none of the knowledge, and all the people at the bottom have all the knowledge and none of the authority to do anything. And so it creates this struggle in creating success. So how do you find the right people, and how do you give them the authority, or how do you make sure that there's knowledge at the top?
Well, it's funny. When you said that, it made me think of us writing those ads.
Yeah.
Of how to attract the right people. And I mean, I think no matter what you're going to get, you're casting a wide net depending on where you're putting those ads. Because the way Kerri and I wrote ads was very direct and made it very clear. We didn't say it, but we kind of said it. We're not for everybody, but we kind of said, forget the ordinary.
Yeah.
We're not doing saying your mama's management company. This is not Janet, Jack, and Mr. Furley. That's taking it back, I know, for you millennials and Gen Zers, but that's what Nashville was a little before Elmington.
Yeah.
It was, about 10 years before Elmington was about when we started to get more of the bigger players in. I think when I started in the business in the mid-'90s, that feels like a long time ago now. It was lots of mom and pops that owned. And so when Elmington came on, it was only becoming a lot more professionalized. I think MTSU was just getting a degree in it, and all of that. So we were still casting these wide nets, but we were very specific starting from that point about who we were looking for, what we were wanting to do, and getting through those interview processes.
Yeah.
And making sure that you're, I would just as soon work it myself and will lease apartments and have no shame in my game whatsoever. In fact, to me, that's where the power is, because you're filling your building up with the people that, are part of, to me, that's part of the brand too. They're walking billboards.
100%.
So those are walking billboards for what you're doing. And if the people that are leasing have a way of attracting those folks, and you can tell pretty quickly how it's going. And I just think that it's about setting the criteria about your non-negotiables and making sure, which is something I did learn from, that was a Kerri Davis thing for sure, the non-negotiables that I live by today. And sticking to those and making sure that that's whoever is in the seat, that when you're not there, it's the integrity of it, that they're going to be doing and executing the vision the way that it's been set up.
Yeah.
Because the first time you're derailing, you are going to derail for a while.
Yeah.
Because it takes a long time to get people in and out, and I don't like to do that. We like to get it right as much on the first time as possible to make sure we keep that vibe, that brand going.
Yeah.
Because it's critical to it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I really love the way that you were talking about the on-site team, like selling the product.
Yeah.
Something that I love so much about the Elon Musk philosophy. You can take him or leave him as a human. That is what it is. But something about the philosophy, right? Like
he's the only one Tony follows on social. I will say that. Which tickles me. I don't allow Tony on social. Let me just be very clear about that.
I love this so much.
Yeah.
As you shouldn't. He does not need to be picking apart everything.
Cannot. My God. No. I'm sorry. I just had a moment. Go ahead.
No. But the thing that I love about certain leaders in this industry and in marketing is that the genius behind creating a product where you aren't actively selling it, right? Like you create a product like Tesla, the car, right? You don't see advertisements for it all over. Like compare the number of advertisements that you see from Tesla versus GM or Ford or any of them, right? Because you create a product that's so good.
Well, it's the if you know.
Flock.
That's right. If you know, you know.
Yes.
And the ones that know will breed that message.
Yep.
And that's, to me, immeasurable.
Yes.
Like that is where the magic happens.
Yeah.
And when you can get to that level, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And the testimonial side of that is what, that's when, as multifamily operators, when you're looking at your marketing and you don't have resident referral in the top safely 3, that's the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a problem. And I know people eye roll over that, but I believe it. I'm like, if that's not a top 3, that's what we're talking about, is when you have those walking billboards and testimonials because they have felt such a certain way.
Yes.
You've nailed your target market.
Yep.
You've nailed it on site. And that's what's happening is this. And we all know there's properties out there that have this. I mean, back in my day, it was, I will shout out for Freeman Webb. It was the Knolls in South Nashville, British Woods. These were some Freeman Webb deals that I remember vividly that just never, Wind Chase Aspen Grove was another one that you would never have. There were no issues. Like, and I'm not knocking anybody. Those people that operated those, first of all, they were long-term managers.
Yeah.
Stayed forever, had a brand, had it down pat, and just never sweated the occupancy issue because even if they had a blip, it was going to be cured like that because that was where the momentum always was because that team was just a gel.
Well, they created an experience,
that's right,
a brand around what they were doing. And so they didn't have to proactively sell. They didn't have to push their product on anyone. They had people coming to them
that's right.
to want to.
Because, when this person moved out, like, my sister had been here for, all the time and she wants to take my lease over. I mean, I would be in the offices listening to this and going, that's, God, they don't need us.
Yeah.
They've got such a amazing reputation among their target market that they've nailed that. And it doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it's magic.
Yeah. I will never forget my favorite marketing campaign that I saw in Nashville, Dallas and Edge.
Oh, Jesus.
I loved the authenticity around what we decided we were selling there.
That's right.
And it really did lend itself to that exact experience.
I thought you were going to say 1818, and I was going to just remember you.
Yes.
I can't even talk about it.
I know.
Don't put that in the notes or something. Tell somebody to reach out to me. I can't discuss it. It's too embarrassing for me. But Dallas and Edge was probably the first example I can think of something that was the most authentic.
Yeah.
That had such a nice capture on the renter demographic at that time. Yeah. And came out swinging in a totally different way. There was no real stock photography. It was just a very, it was. Authentic's the best word for that.
Yeah.
And it was cool. And we nailed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
1818 to this day, which it was a similar, it was
I think you need to share.
Okay. Well,
okay.
That was painful for me.
Why painful? I don't know that I would have used that word to describe it.
Well, because, and I don't know if you know the full story about that. So we did 3 brands. We did 3 brands for Tony at the time.
Yep.
And we were thought they were great. And this was after doing what she just mentioned, which was Dallas and Edge.
Yep.
We'd already done those.
Yep.
And so we handed over these 3 brands these are going to be great. He's going to love them. It's Friday afternoon. I'm in my office. Most everyone's gone, but John and Lindsay are still there.
Yep.
And I get an email from Tony that says, all it said, this is 5 o'clock on a Friday. All it said was, you need to find your porn phase. And listen, listeners, I will cuss like a sailor. I can't help it. I have 5 brothers and a daddy's girl. Can't help it. My husband in the Navy. But I don't want to hear about sexual stuff. I don't want, I cannot. So I got real pissed. I was like, that is so offensive. And I was so mad. And so John and Lynn, I said, look at this shit. And so we stayed and redid the brand that weekend.
Did you find your porn face?
It was immediate. I was like, what? Took the earrings off, oh, now he's just messed with the wrong girl. And so,
yes.
So we did the campaign, which was Lust for Living.
Yes.
On the Nashville sign with the hands in the hot shower. And
hold on the wall.
On the wall.
Yeah. Yeah. So the glass
Yeah.
on the first floor of the building was wrapped in silhouettes.
That's right. Now I stand by that. That was Dallas. That was the Dallas.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Because
I
got so furious. I got so pissed at him.
Yeah.
I was like, this looks like a damn hospital.
That's right. Yeah.
I said, can we not dress this shit up in the front? Like we need to make this come to life. And we did. Those were cool. Like we put those silhouettes,
I
backlit the
so
silhouettes,
much.
lit up the outside, and put music outside.
Yes, it was so sexy. It really was
cool. But the shower on the Nashville sign was what really started, and it was like a hot shower and 4 hands, and it was like steam, and it was less for living 1818.
Yep.
And that damn property leased in 81 days.
Insane.
81
Incredible.
days. To this day, if somebody please knows of a faster lease up that was not affordable, let me know. Because that one, as far as I know, was for downtown for sure, was the fastest lease up we had. And it was just, like the website was the girl running in the guy's shirt, and then the white curtains coming open. And like usually when you go to a lease up website, it was just the stock photo with the diverse group of friends at the coffee shop with the heart in it, and they're smiling and they're doing this, and it was so and so now leasing, and ours was just like after dark, and it was tapping into what was really going on in downtown Nashville in 2015 or 14 or something with all those young renters, and that was crazy.
Love it. And it all started with an email that you were like
furious.
Yeah, furious.
Furious. And I was just like, who does he think and what is he even talking about? Like, that's not even, who does he think we, and I just fired me up, and it was done. And by the next Monday, we had the new one for him, and he loved it, and he still talks about that one. But but I give that to John and Lindsay too. I mean, that was a magic group right there, that we did some amazing things together and did things that they were charging. And that was and to Kerri's 100% credit, what was it? I guess it was 11 North after they'd come into the Nashville and had one of the more unique brandings that I'd seen. And it really inspired me to see how you could infuse the brand more. That was the first time something got my attention on the multifamily side. Before that, I was always amazed and excited by a campaign that nails it and gets it right. Like that just excites me to this day. I remember we were doing I think we were doing the brand for us.
Yeah.
And we went through it with this group, and it was just like terrible.
Yes.
And I mean, we did it. We got through it, and we got our first round and whatever, and we made it. But then we came in for somebody else. We were going to do a brand, or we needed a brand, and we were going to hire some group from Atlanta or something. And I was like, Kerri, we can do this ourselves and it not be $50,000.
Yep.
It could be 15 or 20, and we bill it. And to Kerri's credit, she was like, let's do it. And that's when we got to hire our artist, and that's when we got to hire an intern who ended up becoming marketing director later. And it was magic. That was so fun. And the fact that we were doing that in Nashville, nobody in multifamily had ever done that I knew of.
Yeah.
And we were the first to do it. And it was, a revenue generating marketing department for a management group that we ended up doing work for other management companies like at the time. And that was cool.
Oh, I think back on those days and the creativity and the magic and just like the startup energy and the vibe was 100%. So incredible.
It was infectious.
And
everybody had that. And everybody was contributing that way and making it, we would have the best of the best come in and, not quite understand exactly what we were doing, but they, like me and like the rest of everyone that came on, was like, this is a rocket ship that we need to get on.
Yeah.
And not unlike what's happening with Fortress. I mean, it's just a very unique opportunity to do it better and differently, I think. Yeah. That people are, it's a rocket ship, I think, that if you get on in the early stages, that you'll be glad you did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's how it felt in the early days for us, too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not for everybody, right?
No.
Like, you have to
you can't be for everybody.
No.
Like if you really can't. And I don't anyone that says that they are fucking liars.
Yeah.
They're just not. Like there's no way that you're doing something for everyone.
Yeah.
So do it for the ones that you know are your target market and do it well.
Yeah. Well, I really loved what you said the last time that you and I chatted, and we were talking about kind of doing things the basic way. And you said, like, the basics are great. They're fine. They're necessary, but they're not going to change the world. And so it's about, like, taking that step outside and almost trying to do things in an unreasonable way.
That's right.
Like, someone comes to you and says it's going to be $50,000 for a branding package. And you're like, fuck that. I can do it for 20. I don't even have the team yet, but I will figure this out. And it will be better than that. And it will be less than half the price. And I get to surround myself with amazing people, and we're going to make this happen. And in so many cases, people will look at you and be like, that's absolutely ridiculous. It's unreasonable. But when you can create the energy to pull something like that off, it's infectious.
And it was magic. And if there was so many things. You said before we started something about asking me about my favorite moments.
Yes. Stories.
And my stories. And I have so many amazing stories. But I'll tell you, especially as it relates to Elmington, by far my favorite was bringing in John and bringing in Lindsay and handing the raises and handing the promotions. And then when I left, and then knowing that they got promoted and that they're still, that to me is just food for my soul. That was pretty cool.
Well, you built something sustainable, right?
Yeah.
Like that's hard, especially when you go through that startup phase and there's so much intensity and so much being unreasonable. Like that's not sustainable. But when you can push past that and reach the point of sustainability and leave with the legacy still intact and it's still operating is a huge testimony to your success.
Thank you. But it was an amazing environment. Like it was the way that everything kind of breeded the creativity and the way that we got the room to do it.
Yeah.
Because I think I can't, and I've worked with every group, really. I think I can't say that now. There's so many new ones now, but a large majority of the groups, and I can't think of another example of somebody that took those kinds of risks.
Yeah.
Not like that.
Yeah.
There's so many that play it pretty safe.
Yep.
And we were not experienced enough to play it safe.
Yeah.
And to our credit, didn't. And did some pretty fun stuff. So but I
attribute some of the best moments in my life to my ignorance. Right?
Same.
Like if you're ignorant, you don't know your limits. You just go after
That's it,
and then you really get to experience something.
I could not agree more. And I live that with Tony every single day.
Yeah.
with my ignorance, not knowing what's happening. Like most days, I'm like, I don't know. I'm just coming in. Half of it is showing up, and I do that every day.
Yep. Yes. Okay, so. Well, I want to go back to that story question. So you, I know, have so many phenomenal stories. And honestly, I could listen to you tell stories about your experience in property management, like even your story of you and Jay. And it's just so wonderful. I love your story. So
oh, my gosh.
If you wouldn't mind to share one with
story.
us.
Oh, my God. You guys, mine are all like heartfelt, weepy stuff that I don't want to necessarily get into. But
well, mine are usually not. Mine are usually the opposite. So
that's why we do so
you need
well. That's the secret sauce here.
You need me to follow up with a hardcore story.
And that's not true, by the way. I know too much over here.
That's true.
No, when I think about just momentous moments, I mean, is that a word?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's all personal stuff, and I will never forget and it's a testimony to what the family of the multifamily, right?
Yeah.
Because we are, and especially in Nashville. Nashville's multifamily, I would put against anybody in the country as far as being a family. Even when we, it's kind of like The Godfather, which I live by the rules. Like, don't ever tell anyone outside the family what you're thinking, Like, we can talk about each other, but nobody else better talk about, like, if Atlanta comes for us, game freaking on, right? And I've always felt that about Nashville. Nashville's been that way. And I'll never forget, in 2008, I was sitting across from Brad Cather, and I got a look down at my phone, and Jay is just calling me. My husband, Jay, he worked at the time at Alive Hospice. He was the maintenance director for them. And phone was just robocall. And I'm like, I'm with Brad Cather. I can't take a call. And finally, I'm like, okay, something's up. Excuse me. And then he got laid off. And my whole world just came to a sudden halt, just in the moment. And I told Brad, and I was like, I got to go. I'm sorry. And he was like, no, fine. The next morning, I mean, I wasn't even like sleep out of my eyes good. And Kerri Davis calls, and Kerri Davis says, I heard about Jay. And I don't know if it was Brad to this day. I have no idea how that happened, but I just know I was the last person I was Brad. And then the next day was Kerri Davis because I heard about Jay. Have him call, and we will have him on staff until he can find something, and didn't matter where, what, like just. And so for 6 months or so because what happened with Medicaid got cut, Alive Hospice had to cut. There was all kinds of stuff. Everybody felt the 08, except for multifamily. Yeah. I mean, we were. Yeah. I mean, we did, but not to the extent of so many others. Yeah, and but anyway, so Jay from the next morning had something and was working for 6 months until he found another a job at with oh Lord, who had Todd Jakovich. Oh, yeah. Who, God love him. So yeah, that was the whole thing was just unbelievable. That that's the family of multifamily. That no matter what, there's somebody that's there that's got your back. That I've never experienced or heard from other friends and other businesses. I'm like, ooh, I don't know that life where you don't have this, like, that somebody will come running. Like if you called me and said something, I'm like, I'm going to be there. Like that's what you do for your people. And that's how I've always felt about it. And that was a great example of that. The craziest time on site was when I was 20 years old. I was working in Antioch, and we were getting gunfire on the back of the building. And this was in like 2000. And I had to go testify at the beer board to get this club shut down, and then started getting death threats from the group that owned the club. And so, but I stood by, and my favorite, and Jay tells it even better. I wish Jay was here because he can tell it better.
Me too.
Yeah, Jay, he'd be good for maintenance. Yeah, which I know everybody, y'all have got me. He's just, yes. But Jay, he tells it better because it was really like Aaron Brockovich, he said, because I'm 20 going to college, and they're trying to keep their club open because they want to have patrons, obviously. Yeah. And I'm like, but you're shooting at my building, and I'm like, I can't have it. And he goes, well, you don't really know who's doing that, do you? Like, you don't know who, like, it could be some of your residents. And I was like, no. Like, I'm sorry. I know the residents that are associated with that building or with your club, and that's the ones that need to also leave. But as far as my residents go, they're the ones upset about you. And he goes, well, you don't know all of them. I'm like, yeah. And so he started going down like random lists of apartments, and I was like, and then, well, that's Joe and his wife Melissa, and their 3 kids, Stella, Hunter, and I mean that's exactly what happened. And
that's an Aaron Brockovich moment.
It was. That's exactly. And I was like, no, I do know them. And Adam Dredd was the council person on that group that night, and we were there till like 1 or 2 in the morning. I'm like, is this right? Is this what how does this work? We're at a beer board at 1 in the morning, and we're having to testify, and I'm up here like calling out residents' names and telling them that's how I know that's not who it is. And we got it shut down. We got the club shut down. We evicted those 2 folks that were associated with it, got them out. And I felt really good that my residents were safe and that they weren't going to have to worry about bullet holes anymore.
Yeah. Oh, I love that story. Thank you for sharing both of those. And I can say, it's such a great example of who we are in Nashville and like building the brand that is multifamily.
It is.
You and I are both so passionate about, and even getting back to the roots of affordable and providing affordable housing.
And we're planning on that, and we're really excited about that. I think Tony has a pretty fantastic model on how to scale some really cool affordable situations, especially in downtown. And
we need it.
We've been working on that, and I think he keeps saying that's how he's going to end his career, and I don't think he'll ever end his career.
Yeah.
When I retire, he says this kind of crap, and I'm like, no. But first of all, I roll no, and second of all, he's got a lot of really cool ideas around affordable housing that I think are going to really redefine it. And if everybody
Yeah.
can get on board on a private-public partnership that way, we could really make some serious dents. And so I've always been passionate about affordable. That's how I
Same.
started. And to me, that's where it's at.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Jenny, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Katie.
It was amazing to spend this
my
time
heart.
with you and
Same.
share your stories and your vision of building a brand with our listeners.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Listeners.